everyone, and welcome to Gruff Talk, where each week we take a deep dive into all the ways we can feel better, look better, live better, and age better. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. Well, today we're diving into the world of health and wellness and fitness with a very special guest, Gretchen Reynolds. Gretchen is a journalist focusing on the science behind health and fitness, and she writes the Your Move column for the Washington Post. Gretchen has been on the show before, and it's always an amazing conversation because she digs really, really deep into the research and explains everything in a way that makes it easy to understand and maybe even incorporate it into your life. Today, we'll explore 3 of her recent articles focusing on the benefits of starting strength training later in life, to the necessity of exercise when using weight loss medications like Ozempic, and even how just a few minutes of fast-paced movement every day can reduce your risk of cancer. Plus, we'll revisit an important discussion that we started the last time she was on the show about a very simple test to measure a certain aspect of your heart's health, a test we wish more women would get. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gruff Talk. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. Joining me today is Gretchen Reynolds. She is a health journalist, and also she writes the Your Move column for the Washington Post, and she has been on Gruff Talk before. Welcome back to Gruff Talk.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a delight.
Oh, it's always so wonderful, really, because I'm a big, big fan of yours. I have been reading your columns when you were in the New York Times, and now when you're at the Washington Post, and I always get something really incredible out of your columns that will help me to live better and age better. So I thank you for that. So today we're going to cover 3 of your recent articles that I really thought were just incredible. And one of the things I love about your writing is that you take some very complicated research and you make it very palatable for all of us that can really understand it, and also maybe incorporate some of what you learned into our lives to make our lives better. So thank you for that.
That's the goal. So thank you.
That is the goal. And will you achieve it every time? So let's go right to the article that I found really fascinating. And that's the one about strength training and how it's never too late to start moving your muscles more and pushing them a little bit further. And in fact, the title of your article, it's never too late to lift weights. Older bodies can still build muscle. According to this research that you uncovered, even people in their 80s and 90s benefited from starting strength training, and they had never done it before. So tell us the science behind it.
Exactly. The real key in what you just said was that they hadn't done it before, because there has been this thinking, and not just in the general public, among scientists, that at some point our muscles basically became so elderly that they could no longer really respond to exercise. And not that long ago, people thought that might start in the 60s. And then studies showed that no, people in their 60s could still build both strength and muscle mass. And that's important because we lose a lot of muscle mass. And scientists thought, okay, maybe you can build strength, but you can't actually build back any mass after a certain time period. And so they started to think that by the time you were in your 80s, you could no longer benefit from strength training. Well, this study showed very definitively that's just not true. They took 2 groups of people. One was sort of the young old people, the people 65 to 75. And then they took a second group.
I'm a young old person.
Yeah, the younger older, and then the older. And these were people 85 to in their 90s who had not weight trained before. And they started all of those. And I should say these people were healthy for their age. They were living independently. They didn't have a lot of diseases or issues, so they could actually start weight training. And they started them on a really basic program of using gym machines. I think it was 4 upper body machines, 3 lower body machines. And they came in 3 times a week. And again, these are people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And they worked out pretty intensely. They were lifting for half an hour. They were lifting 80% of the amount that they could lift. That's a really good workout. And they all did it. And they did it for 3 months. One of the researchers told me they loved it. And the really important thing is their muscles responded enormously well. The scientists themselves were actually shocked, especially at the effects among the group that were in their 80s and 90s. They added 50% to their strength. They added more than 10% to their mass. That's really a lot. It actually, in relative terms,
that is significant.
It was more than that the younger, older group who also added strength and mass, but in relative terms, it was actually less. So there's no doubt at all, based on this study, that our muscles can keep responding no matter what the age is. With the caveat, these people were fairly healthy to start with. If someone is 85 and has a lot of disabilities, you may need to start lower. You may need to start with less weight, go fewer times a week. But even for those people, there's no evidence that your muscles can't respond, that you can't grow stronger, that you can't grow larger. So
that is so encouraging. And that's why I loved all 3 of the articles that we're covering today, but I really love that one the most because it really, I think, gives people hope that they really can do something. They can do something that's, realistic. It's realistic. And it wasn't just sewing. It wasn't over the top stuff is really what I'm saying either, right?
No, it wasn't over the top. It wasn't some strange program that was developed just for older people. It was a very basic, normal weight training program. The one caveat, and the scientists who did this study mentioned this to me, is, again, these sessions were all supervised. Someone had a trainer there watching them. So if you are out there and you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, have never weight trained before, they suggested, and I would agree, try and find a program that does cater to older exercisers just to get yourself started, just so that you understand how to use the machines correctly. I mean, that would be true for anyone, whatever your age, but particularly if you're a little older, at least find a trainer who can help you work through using the machines correctly. There were no injuries in this program. Almost everyone completed every session. So it's not that people of any age can't do this, but you do want to set yourself up for success. So find someone to help you get started in the best possible way.
One of the articles that we talked about the last time you were on, which I found fascinating, was grip strength. And, you talked about the science behind how you can build up your grip strength, which you can do. And you do that by doing all of the things that you just talked about that these 60, 70, and 80 and 90-year-olds just did. So, of course, I know that wasn't in your article, but I am so curious. I wonder if, I guess we can just assume, I wonder if we tested their grip strength before and after the 3 months, would it be greater? Probably, right? I'm sure
Almost
their grip strength would be better. Almost, yeah, certainly. Yeah. And then I'm also wondering, are they going to keep up with it? Were they motivated enough to stay with it? I really hope so.
Well, yeah, I asked the lead author exactly that question, and he said they're not checking back in with people because that wasn't part of their study protocol. But he did say at the end of the program, they all told him they wanted to keep going with it. They wanted to continue their gym memberships. They really were motivated. I mean, 50% stronger is a really important change. And they also, I should have mentioned this, that their functional fitness was much better. They tested things like the ability to get up out of a chair, to walk down the hallway. those are really important measures of how long you can remain independent, how long you can live on your own. And they all improved significantly, whatever these people's ages. So it did, in fact, literally change their lives. So yes, they seemed really
It did
motivated.
change their life. Yeah. That was going to be my next question was, did they do anything as like real life things, like put a suitcase up on top of the shelf or, the airplane compartment, or reach for something on the top shelf, or sit down, stand up? And it sounds like, yeah, of course they did. And it proved once again that if we do the right exercises in the right way and stick with it, we can do that. And it's so funny. I've seen so many studies that say, because you mentioned 3 months, that 3 months really is what can take an action to a habit if you stick with it for 3 months. So hopefully now all of these people, that's just such a great story, really wonderful. And I'm so glad that you brought it to our attention. So really everyone, the message to the listeners is that 3 times a week sounds right. Get a fitness instructor or a class that really focuses on people in this age group. Anything else you want to add to that?
There's actually some evidence that even doing less than 3 times a week can still have considerable benefits, even for older people, if you just can't get to a gym 3 times a week. I've written about other studies showing twice a week improved the strength of people as they were older. Even once a week actually did increase people's strength in a study I wrote about last year. So whatever you can manage is going to make a difference. This particular study is probably sort of the most that you need, and it shows the most benefit that you can achieve, but anything is definitely going to make a difference.
Right. And we'll get to a similar story about it doesn't take very much to really get some benefits in a few minutes, another story. But next article I want to talk about, hot topic, very hot topic, weight loss and Ozempic and the other drugs in that category, Munjaro and Wegovy and the like. My biggest concern being really focused on exercise and bone health in particular is that people who are going to lose weight successfully under the doctor's care on one of these medications might say, okay, then I'm losing the weight. That was my goal. I don't need to even eat well. I don't need to exercise because I'm losing the weight. And that is a really big concern. And I will not be surprised if months or a few years down the road with this lag, right, that we start to see some frailty among these people that didn't exist before. But anyway, let's get right to it. Your article talked about, how some experts are now saying, hey, even if you're on one of these medications, you still have to exercise. And here's why. Tell us why, Gretchen.
This study was very simple. All it did was look at 2 groups of people, and that they all went on the same sort of lowish calorie diet. It was plant forward and was designed to help them lose about 10% of their body weight. That they were not taking Ozempic. This was actually before Ozempic was everywhere, but it's the same principle. And so half of the group just went on the diet. The other half went on the exact same diet, but also exercised. And they didn't lose additional weight. We should be very clear. Exercise by itself does not burn a lot of calories. It's not the best way to lose weight. But what they found was that, again, this was about 5 months to lose 10% of their body weight. That the groups, again, they ate the exact same thing. The only thing that was different was that they exercised. And these were all people who started out with both obesity and either full-blown or pre-diabetes. They had real trouble with insulin control. And all of them at the end, after losing weight, showed signs of better insulin sensitivity, that their metabolisms were better. But the group that had exercised, and they didn't exercise that much, they showed twice as much benefit in terms of their insulin sensitivity. It was twice as good. And they had much healthier muscles. Their muscles now had a lot more blood vessels. They had a lot more of the cellular components that make for healthier muscle. These people also were about 20% stronger and they were more fit. Whereas the people in the other group that didn't exercise were actually not just less fit. I think they lost 5% of their fitness. They also had lost something like 15% of their muscle strength and mass. And that, as you were mentioning, over time, even if you're losing weight, that is going to contribute to not just metabolic problems, but all kinds of other issues. And so what this study and what the scientists I talked to said very clearly was, yes, these drugs are great, that they really are. And losing weight is a wonderful goal. But if you're just losing weight, there can be real consequences. And there's some, at least anecdotal evidence, that people are losing quite a bit of muscle with some of the Ozempic. It's not clear if it's more than when people lose weight from any other means. But if you're losing muscle, that will have both metabolic and also functional issues for you down the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great comparison to make to the article that we just talked about with strength training and how it increased their strength and their muscle mass and their functional movement abilities to really live life successfully. And this can be compromised. I hear. So really the point is, I brought up Ozempic and the other medications, but it's really anyone who's losing weight in any way really needs to focus on also exercising their muscles and their bones. They have to.
Well, and the good news in that is, again, this was not a difficult program. I think they went into a gym and they got on a treadmill 4 times a week and they lifted weights once a week. So it wasn't that complicated, but it really amplified the benefits of losing weight. And we know from plenty of studies that the 2 best markers of how long and well you will live are your muscle strength and your endurance. And if you are losing those while you lose weight, then you have compromised your ability to live long and well. If you can work out while you're losing weight, then you wind up with all the benefits of weight loss and you're stronger and fitter. So you've set yourself up for a much longer, healthier, thinner life. So it's all good.
It's all good. It's a win-win. I will be very, very eager to see some future articles from you, Gretchen, focusing on this and maybe the impact of. Yeah, I'm sure we will. Okay. So now moving on to article number 3. Lastly, let's talk through how moving fast, even for a few minutes, and we'll define moving fast. I'd like you to do that, can reduce your risk of cancer and reduce your risk for other diseases. Talk to us. I mean, a few minutes. Okay, define a few minutes, define fast.
Well, the first thing I'll define is fast, which in this study is vigorous exercise. And vigorous exercise, in sort of the most common definition, is moderate exercise. I'll start from light exercise. If you're doing something really lightly, you can both talk and sing while you're doing it. That would be a really slow walk. A moderate exercise would generally be, you can't sing, but you can sort of chat with someone while you're doing it. That would be a brisk walk. Vigorous exercise, you really can't talk while you're doing it. You're breathing pretty hard. Your heart rate does go up. You can feel it. You would essentially be sort of out of your comfort zone. If you're generally a walker, it would be right at the top edge of where you can still walk and not run. If you're a runner, it would be you're running pretty hard. And there's very clear evidence that there are benefits to vigorous exercise that you don't get from moderate exercise. And it's partly that you can do less of it in a short period of time, but there also are certain chemical reactions that happen with vigorous exercise that don't happen with any other kind. And so there are pretty good reasons to try once in a while to sort of get yourself out of your physical comfort zone. And again, that can mean walking up a hill. That can turn into vigorous exercise. But what this study did that I found really great was it looked at how we can fit vigorous exercise into our lives without exercising. What they were looking for was whether people who just do things like run to the bus stop, they're not running, they're just moving faster to get from one place to another than people who just stroll. And they had a term for it. I think it was vigorous intensity lifestyle activity. So it wasn't exercise. It was picking up the pace of things you would do anyway. And what they found was that people who did that for as little as 3 minutes a day, and they didn't exercise otherwise, this was all they did, was they hurried somewhere for 3 minutes a day, were about 30% less likely to develop a whole variety of cancers than people who never picked up the pace.
I want to hear that again. 30%.
Yes.
That's big.
It is.
Big.
As a relative risk.
Are you saying that if they did it one time, like ran for the bus one time a day?
If it was 3 minutes, then yes. They were looking at over a 24-hour period. And for some people, literally, it was one thing they did. It could be running up the stairs, as long as it amounted to cumulatively 3 minutes of what they called vigorous, not exercise, just vigorous activity. It reduced their risk. And this was the risk of developing cancer, which is really important. It's not that there have been other studies looking at mortality from cancer and all of that. And it certainly helps with that too. But the really great thing about vigorous exercise, even in tiny doses, is it does look like it really helps you avoid developing some of the most severe cancers too. It was breast cancer and colon cancer and some of the really worrisome ones.
The really big ones. It was incredible. They didn't actually exercise. So we can't even call it, when you were on the show last time, we talked about something, exercise snacks, as you called it, right? As people call it. And like that's little bouts of, but that's intentional exercise. I mean, you are exercising, but it's just like a small amount. Whereas this is, as you pointed out, really part of your everyday life. Running up the stairs, running for the bus, things like that, running up the hill, or, walking fast up the hill because you have to get there.
You were going to do
just
this
only
anyway.
Because you have to get to the top of the hill. Right. You were going to do this anyway. It's really, really fascinating. So the whole point, what would you say? What's the biggest takeaway from that particular study and your article that you want people to kind of remember from that?
The biggest takeaway there is twofold. One is that there really are benefits to sometimes making yourself go a little harder than you might normally. But the second part of that is you don't have to actually go out and do that as part of exercise. Just take the time that you were going to be walking to the bus anyway, that you were going to be walking from your car to the office, and go a little faster. It'll save you a little time.
Just go a little faster.
It might protect you from cancer.
It just blows my mind. What blows my mind the most, and I always get so amazed by this whenever you're on the show, is like just moving your body in certain ways can benefit you in so many ways. It's just, to me, it's just mind blowing that more people don't embrace this and just do it. But I always hope, Gretchen, that when people hear this, that wasn't so hard. I can do that, that they do, and they keep at it, and they go for the 3 months or so it becomes a habit. That's always my hope. All right. So I also want to talk about something that when you were on the show last time, toward the end, we talked about a very important and personal article that you wrote about a very dear friend of yours, one of your, key running buddies also, as well as a dear friend. And she died from a massive heart attack, and very suddenly. And
Yes.
everybody was in shock. I'm sure you still are on many, many levels. This happened last year. And in your article and then in our discussion, you talked about if she had only had a very simple, non-invasive test, that it's very possible that her life could have been saved. That's big. And that's big. And so we did talk about it. And this test, if you don't mind, maybe talk a little bit about what this test is and the fact that you ended up getting the test and I ended up getting the test too. What is the test?
The test is called a calcium score, and it's a really simple, as you said, non-invasive scan of your heart that actually will show the plaque in the various arteries that lead into and out of your heart. And it's usually covered by insurance. It takes a minute. When I went in for mine, I think the entire thing from getting dressed to having the scan to leaving the office was about 8 minutes. So it's not going to take up a lot of your time. I've had my whole family, except my son who's 20, I've had my whole family do it. My sisters, my husband, I did it. A couple of instances have shown real problems with plaque. I had mentioned to you, my husband is on a statin now. He rides his bike all the time. We eat well. All of these things certainly are helpful, but they're not a guarantee that your heart is perfectly healthy. So it's definitely worth it. And it's really worth it for us women who often don't think we are at any risk to go in, get a calcium score. And as you found, it may not be perfect. So it is important to know.
No, in my case, absolutely. After we had our conversation and the recording went out and I listened to it again, I said, I really don't need to get that calcium score. I run, I eat so well, I have no symptoms, I'm never short of breath, on and on and on and on, right? I went check, all the way down the list of why I didn't need this test. But I said, you know what? I think I'm going to get this test. And I did. And lo and behold, it showed that I do have some plaque buildup. I was in shock. I'm still kind of in shock. And it wasn't so severe, but it was enough that the cardiologist I went to see about this, she put me on a statin. So I am now on a statin. And I'm absolutely thrilled and grateful that there is such a thing that could help with this plaque that I now have. So I'm excited about that, but I'm still so shocked that I didn't really know about it. I mean, and here I'm someone who interviews doctors all the time, and it just wasn't something that was on my radar screen, Gretchen, until you came on the show, until I read the article, and then you came on the show and we talked about it. So I am very grateful for that, because I do feel like, who knows how many years would have gone by before I would have had that calcium score test. So I now am having everybody I know get this calcium score test. And you did say that insurance covers it. In my case, it did not cover it. I'm not really sure why. I guess because the doctor felt I didn't really need it. By the way, she did say that. The cardiologist said, I don't think you really need this test. I said, well, I'd like to get this test. But you don't really need it, but I think I'd like to get it. Thank you. So anyway, I'm glad I did.
For listeners out there, it's worth calling your insurance company in advance. My doctor also said, I don't really think you need it, but it was covered by my insurance as preventive care. And so it may be that if you call and check with your insurance company in advance, it can be marked down as preventive care. And then it should be covered, even if you don't have risk factors. Again, my dear friend Anne had pretty much none of the risk factors. It was an absolute shock to all of us. And a good reminder that, yes, eating well and exercising often are your best opportunities to live long and well, but they're not a guarantee. Your genetics, just bad luck, all sorts of factors play in, and it is worth having these things checked, and especially for us women, and especially for women who are past menopause, all of these things play a role. Right. And I would urge everyone out there to go and get a calcium score. Take some of your girlfriends with you. Take your spouse. Just get it done and know sort of how healthy your heart is.
Absolutely. And by the way, even though my insurance didn't cover it it in New York City, it wasn't very expensive at all. It was $150. And I think it was well worth it. It is not an expensive test. So don't be scared off, everyone, from having this test done, even if it's not covered. So thank you so much again, Gretchen. I truly appreciate that. Now, like the last time you were on, also at the end, I asked you, hey, Gretchen, so with all of the research that you covered and wrote about in the previous year, and I asked you and you gave a great answer. How did you change how you do things as a result of this new research that you learned about and wrote about? So I'm going to ask you the same thing, because we're at the end of the year. It's the end of December. It's the end of 2023. So looking back at 2023, back at this year, is there anything that really stands out that makes you go, because, the last time you had some great, wow, I didn't know about this. I'm going to start doing this and that. And I'm going to have a link to that episode in the show notes, everyone, in case you missed it. So what did you uncover in 2023 that's going to make 2024 a little bit different for you?
Well, I am actually weight training more than I ever have before. I may have mentioned it's not my favorite way to work out. I would much rather take my dogs and go for a run. But I am.
Me too.
I love running. I love biking, and I love doing it all outside. And going indoors to a gym and lifting weights is not my favorite thing to do. But what I have discovered is once you start and you can see the benefits, you can see yourself getting stronger, and both you can see it in your muscles and you can see in how much weight you can actually lift. That is really motivating. And the evidence is so really persuasive that it's one of the keys to allowing us to age well and to do everything we want to do as we grow older, that I am committed to continuing to do it. I'm doing more push-ups than I ever used to do. I did buy a pull-up bar, and one of my goals for 2024 is to become able to do a pull-up, which I can't do yet. They are pretty hard for women. I can hang from the bar for quite a while, which is very good for your grip strength. But one of my goals is to do a pull-up. And I also am doing a little more sort of interval style work and plan to. And if it means that I only run from my car into Trader Joe's, I'll do that just to pick up the pace and make sure that I am getting the vigorous exercise in and getting in it easily as I can and as often as I can. So those are some of my goals for 2024.
Well, I always like to copy everything you do, so I'll be doing the same. And I actually have been upping my strength training too. And I do test my grip strength with I always forget how to say dynamometer.
Dynamometer, I think.
However, thank you. I do test my grip strength and I write it down to see how I'm improving, because that's another very easy way to see if you are in fact improving your strength and your fitness level. So thank you so much. I know as a result of this episode and your articles, which of course I'll have links to in the show notes, the audience is going to be zooming around a lot faster and more frequently and hopefully lifting more weights. So, yeah. And
I hope so too.
And if everyone listening in, if the new year, new you thing says you want to lose weight, if that's the goal, please keep exercising. Right, Gretchen?
Absolutely. And do it as easily as you can, but just keep doing it. That's really the key.
Yep. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you'll be back, and always look forward to speaking with you and learning more new things about how we can age better. So appreciate it, and wishing you a happy new year.
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Gruff Talk, please do 2 things. First, share it with all your friends and family, and subscribe to Gruff Talk wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Until next time, remember this: we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.